All right. So first and foremost, I always like to begin uh, every presentation by saying thank you to all the hard work that you do for our students. Thank you for the long nights, the weekend excursions, the trips, the conversations after 5 o'clock, and sometimes in the early morning hours with our students. And so thank you for all the work that you do within our system. I also like to send a special thank you to the Mr. Fox in AB Tech, as well as Dr. Tate and Mr. Thomas at Roanoke Shawan for hosting really great programs this semester for colleges and different campuses to attend. I think those that were attendants really enjoyed it, and so thank you for those efforts. Here at the system office, my position oversees sort of a host of different areas. So that includes athletics, student activities, leadership and governance, service learning, the Minority Male Success Initiative. I also deal with student complaints. And so as complaints arise to the system office, we funnel those back down to the appropriate individuals within our system. I'm also responsible for updating all the student services web pages on the system office. So if there is a resource that you are looking for or that you need to be added to the system office website, please let me know and I will make sure that I can make that available for everyone as soon as possible. For those who do not know our full staff, we are led by Dr. James Kelly. He came to us from Randolph Community College. He's the Associate Vice President of Student Services. For those who remember Dr. White, she is still here as the Director of Student Services, and she deals a lot with the residency, financial aid, issues, records retention, etc. Dr. Roxanne Newton is the head of the North Carolina Student Success Center here in the system. Many of you know Dr. Hickman and Mr. Alvarado. They are still here. So Dr. Hickman is the Associate Director of Enrollment Management. He deals a lot with the scholarships, Golden Leaf. He's heavily involved in residency and reverse transfer, etc. Mr. Alvarado is still here at the system office as well. His role deals with all things student support, so think career advising, academic advising, disability services, etc. Miss Barbetta is new to our staff. She came at the end of last semester as well, and she is doing a number of special projects. So she is the one primarily evaluating the redesign, multiple measures, developmental redesign, and so she's compiling reports on what has taken place since the inception of those initiatives, and will be making recommendations on what may need to evolve as we move forward. And as always, we are sort of solidified by Ms. Lentz, who you may receive a number of emails from her in regards to a number of the things that we do here in the office. And so Miss Melissa Lentz is our admin here, and she keeps us all in line and all straight. So our agenda today, I'll give a quick financial update. I'll talk about some of our collaboration and outreach efforts. I'll talk about the end of the year report and new budget cycle going forward. And then I have some professional development opportunities and some conferences that are going to be within a local or regional short drive that individuals may be able to go to. We'll also have open forum for individuals to ask questions should they have them. And then if anybody has any other specific announcements, we can do that as well. So as many of you know, you received an email from me in late December saying, please update us on sort of the status of your expenditures and what you plan to need using forward, and then provide an update on how much money you think you may have left over so that we can move money around and assist colleges that may be spending a little bit faster than some others. And so that report was sent out, and when I received the summary report at the beginning of the semester, 4 colleges identified that they would be willing to give back money and then disseminate that amongst other institutions. That process has already taken place, and I have an update on where some of those numbers currently stand. So in the fall, 47 institutions responded. The total allocation amount was roughly 17,000, we'll just say flat, from 4 institutions, but 14 institutions were requesting additional money. So we took what colleges identified as they are willing to donate or give back, and just split that equally amongst everyone. So the institutions that requested funding received an additional $1,200. Just something as of note, although we can track how much money has been spent sort of on a month-to-month basis, here at the system office, we typically run a month behind from when your campus reports those documents to the system office. And so I have the numbers that I'm showing are from the February 1st report, just because the March report hasn't been received as of yet. Also, I'd like to note that we can't force institutions to give back money, even if they have a number or a higher percentage of their allocation still remaining. That's because some business offices do transactions at the end of the semester to sort of reimburse the college for expenditures out of a different budget line. There are different number of budget practices that are that sort of negate us from saying, hey, this institution hasn't spent any money thus far. Why can't we take this money back? Just because they may be taking that back as an encumbrance at the end of the academic year. So that's something I'd also like to know moving forward. So what I did was I took the summary report from each month and did sort of a percentage, so I can track percentages used at a month over time. And so as of February 1st, for those looking at the screen, here are the institutions in the Western region and the percentage of funding that they have remaining that has been encumbered. So basically, I tried to get the clearest picture of how much money institutions had left based on their earmarks of funding that they had remaining. And so I'll give you a minute to digest those. And for those, again, that don't have it, I will make sure I email out the full document and presentation with my notes. For the central region, you can see here there's sort of a greater spread of the institutions in the central region. And many have spent well over half, in some cases, more money than they've received. And then in the eastern region, you'll see the spread here. And there's a huge swath of diversity on how institutions have been expending their funds. One thing I will say, sort of in summary, out of the 47 institutions that receive funding from us, there are about 12 that still have 98% remaining in their pot. And again, that they may have it encumbered, or they may be they may have a specific process on how that they're spending that money, or they're purchasing something fairly large at the end of the academic year. There are about 26 institutions that have under 75% of their allocation left, and there are 11 institutions that have less than 50% of their allocation left. There is approximately 119 remaining days until June 30th. And so your institution essentially has 119 days to expend funds how you see fit. Now, the estimate of my funding is probably going to be a little high, because it won't count any of the expenditures that have taken place in February, especially with some of the travel that has taken place. But we have roughly only spent, say, of the 810,000 we received as a system, we'll say roughly 300,000. And so do know that funds can't be carried over from year to year. There are some ways to, pay for services or contracts or purchase for equipment that can be up until June 30th. Just know that the semester is quickly winding down. Many people have sent sort of questions on how funding can be spent, and I've sort of responded to those individually. And so I'll just brief them quickly. Other institutions are paying consultants to help develop a summer bridge or orientation program that's fully acceptable. They've hired success coaches. They've paid for portions of early alert software. Or text alert software as well. So for institutions that may be spending funds for, or for institutions that only allow text alerts to be sent for, say, inclement weather, you can use your funding to pay for those services to be sent for financial aid announcements, registration reminders, those types of things. That's sort of an institutional choice should you choose to do so. There are other software packages that institutions are purchasing, paying for their coordinators and or coaches and or tutors. All those things are totally acceptable as well. Creating a personal advising or single stop structure, maybe that you need money for equipment or personnel costs, those are totally fine. And then some are paying for personal development, not only for their students, but maybe also faculty, staff, etc., as well as purchasing assessments, whether they be formal institutional assessments like the community college survey of student engagement, or the career assessments or personality assessments. All of those things are sort of career assessments will fall under that category as well. So there's really, other than a few constraints, how you expend funds is really up to your particular institution. We've had a number of outreach and collaboration with entities, and I'll highlight one because it may involve a system-wide effort, and I wanted to get some input from those on the phone, or if anyone has this sort of an immediate reaction, feel free to share. So these are some of the folks that we've reached out to. So the Community College Equity Assessment Lab, which used to be the Minority Male Community College Collaborative, or M2C3 out of San Diego. Jobs for the Future, they are the grant funder for the Student Success Center here. The African American Male Initiative out of the University System of Georgia, the Student Success Center here, and also the Center for Study of Race and Equity in Education, and that is Sharon Harper's research organization within UPenn. So we've contacted a number of entities to try to really assess some of the strategies that we're implementing, and really reach out to some of the folks that have been doing this work and researching this work to find ways to enhance our practice. So with the Community College Assessment Lab, they offer the collaboration with the San Diego organization. And one of the topics that came up was, do we want to join M2C3 as a system? So all 47 institutions under that umbrella could potentially join M2C3 as a research partner, and there are a number of benefits to that. There are some, I won't say negatives to that, but there are some things that become more difficult just because we represent so many different institutions. The benefits of joining the consortium, they offer webinars currently, and if you aren't already signed up for those webinars, go to cceal.org. That's cceal.org. You can sign up for those monthly or webinars that they offer out of San Diego, and most folks are familiar with Dr. Harris and Dr. Wood because they've done a number of different sessions already. They also have information sharing sessions for institutions that are both regional, and they also have a national sharing session in multiple different places around the U.S. Where some of the financial burden and cost comes in to join the consortium is participating in the annual convening that's always held at their institution in San Diego, we would be required to send representatives from our institutions, but not from every institution. So as long as, say, a cohort of professionals from our system went to the annual convening, took those notes and passed on those documents and or resources back to the remaining colleges, that would sort of satisfy the requirement for colleges to participate in the annual convening. And grant funds would be able to, colleges would be able to use their grant fund to go to the annual convening in San Diego, but obviously it may be just cost prohibitive given the time of year, hotel, travel, flight expenses, etc. And so that is something that institutions may have to sort of grapple with or consider on an individual basis. If we join, that is something we have already said that 2 or 3 representatives from the system office would be sort of already going to represent our group, and of course anyone that would like to join, that would be an option for them to travel as well. They also offer a number of different resources and research assessments for campuses to assess their students, faculty, and student services staff, and some of those packages are on the screen. All of those assessments do cost money to the institution, in which again, grant funds could be used to pay for some of these assessments, but the assessments are quite costly. For example, the Community College Instructional Development Inventory, which is an inventory given to all the faculty, both full-time and part-time, at your institution over a 3-year period to do a pre and sort of post assessment, is roughly $25,000 to $30,000 without before talking any discounts or large group packages, and that's for an institution regardless of size. And all of these different instruments have been validated and researched. So the resources are really, really great. We know they may be useful. Just given the cost, we just currently don't know how many institutions would be willing to absorb that type of cost in order to conduct some of the deeper research needed using these particular assessments. They also offer 2 free assessments. So one is given to minority males at your institution. It's called the MPACE, M-P-A-C-E. You can contact the organization and they will send you the documents and sort of all of those sort of requirements of how to do the particular assessment, but that is a free assessment that they offer. Even if you don't join the consortium, that's something that institutions could utilize. And then they also have a community college student success inventory, and I put a PDF copy of this on the system office website for the Minority Male Success Initiative. It is essentially a self-reflection of your institution, where your administrators gather around the table to assess some of the services and how well they are received or perceived by students of color or underrepresented populations at your institution. And so, they are offering us a chance to join as a 47 institution. We've had a number of conversations with our advisory committee, sort of internal here to the system, and we are going to contact the organization to find out what the next steps might be, and then allow individuals to ask any sort of questions before we either take the plunge or not take the plunge. They also offer some professional development training opportunities, not only for program coordinators, but for individuals at our institutions as well. Dr. Harris and Dr. Wood have told us that they are willing to come to North Carolina to host training, either for coordinators as a system, or come to individual campuses for professional, sort of customized professional development training, should that be something that is desired. Of course, they also speak to students, but I think most of their work has been geared towards helping professionals aid students. And the only thing that gets a little tricky here is that the money that we receive here at the system office for the grant, we can't sort of set any of that money aside in order to, pay for the professional development up front. So when the grant funds are awarded to the institutions in the fall, we have to send 100% of the allocation out to the institutions, and then institutions would then have to pay sort of a registration fee or pay the money back to register for this type of an event. And that is just how our grant funds have been allocated. And those are sort of some of the rules and constraints that we have to play within. So for a professional development, say for a one-day professional development training or two-day training, it would be approximately $300 per institution to cover, their hotel, their travel, any of the materials that they bring, etc. It's roughly, we'll say, $10,000 for them to come do a two-day training session for us here in North Carolina, not including, some of those other things that we may have to pay for as a result of them being here. So, that is an offer they have sort of laid on the table if institutions are interested. And if you are, I'll be sending out a survey sort of later in the semester to see how many institutions may be interested in either providing, either attending a session for everyone, or potentially hosting a session at their institution, given some of the other unique things that we can do and try. They also offer 2 specific certificates in sort of a hybrid class model. And one is teaching men of color, and one is supporting men of color. These are a 15-hour professional development certificate that they have created. And it, depending on your package, the price will vary depending on what we offer. And so it's a little more intense than, say, the 2-day training session. But it is sort of another avenue to receive or to be certified as someone who works with this population and is really engaged in this type of work. Excuse me. So while we're here, before I jump to the end of the year reports, does anyone have any particular question or anything they want to sort of jump in and throw out there before we move forward? Hearing none, make sure you unmute yourself if you have anything to say. But if not, I'll sort of jump to the end of the year reports. So when we initially began the grant process, we were really trying to sort of rethink and reshape how we evaluated what we do and figure out ways to streamline or tie it into action or changes or improvements or enhancements for the next academic year. So for the end of the year reports, there's really 3 aspects. So the system data report, which is going to be the second iteration of the 2016 progress and persistence report that we ran, which basically breaks down all the different measures here at the system office. There's going to be an institution report that we'll ask colleges to submit. And then we'll either have a summer and fall convening, which could either be centralized, so we can have everyone come to one particular location, or the team here will either do one sort of in the western region, central region, and eastern region to ease travel for institutions over the summer and or early fall, just because we know it's one of the busiest times of year. So for the system data report, the way it works, well, I'll just explain the process. So all your fall data came to the system office in mid-February, and it takes 2 to 3 weeks for the data to be scrubbed and cleaned before queries can be run to start building cohorts and really doing some heavy analysis. And so in mid-June will be when all the spring data comes in. So we're looking at a target date of mid-July for when the system office can produce our data report that was run this past year. And so it'll provide us the update for all colleges on each of the measures, and we can really see how institutions have been doing and how our students have been performing. The report will be done here, and so you don't have to worry about it. The data automatically comes in from the institution's IR, admissions office, records and registrations, etc. And so our team here will produce report. We'll also produce the methodology of how all the measures were done. So what students we were counting, what students we weren't counting, all those types of things to give individuals sort of greater insight on how the report came to be. For the institution report, I'm going to email it out after today's call, and it is sort of a narrative report that will be reviewed by the system office. I think we even have to submit it to the state board for review. But then we'll also create a booklet of all 47 of them, so you can see what other colleges are doing, what other strategies or best practices that institutions are highlighting, and hopefully it'll serve as a resource for other for institutions in our system. It's only 5 questions in short, and so it's, what did you do? What did you learn? What was effective? What are your goals for the new year? What additional resources did you need? What sort of hurdles or obstacles did you incur? And then what's your fiscal or budgetary plan for the new year? And so we wanted to make it as sort of short, sweet, to the point. And obviously these are sort of the shortened version of the questions, but instead of going through sort of the full RFP process, we wanted to tie it into an evaluation so that we're only asking you to respond to these types of questions in this manner. Lastly, again, for our July-August timeframe, we're really trying to, in some ways, we're sort of at the mercy of data reporting, at least for all the statistical analysis, but we are willing to either, we know that many of our coordinators may not work fully over the summer or have limited availability over the summer, and so that's something that we are really considering. So, if it's a situation where we need to meet either in August or earlier in the spring semester before individuals or professionals depart, that's something that we know we need to be mindful of, and we are going to find different ways to come together as a group. Again, we can either do these centralized or by region. There are sort of people on different camps on who feel which is best or more effective, and really, I'll ask the audience if anybody has any stronger feelings on which way they feel is more effective. But we will offer a variety of ways to share this information. As for some conferences or professional development, March has been is going to be fairly crazy with a number of different trainings that are taking place, not only with residency, there's a student conduct forum, a whole host of things. But so I did a sort of a quick canvas of some of those trainings, and I posted them here due to some of the recent changes with some of the residency determination trainings. I didn't include any of those just because those haven't been solidified yet, but I did include some others that individuals may be interested in attending. So on Monday, there's actually a NC Ahead Driving Conference, and it's at Surrey Community College, and it's for individuals who may have a greater impact or outreach to those who serve individuals with disability services. The 2017 North Carolina ACT conference will be at Wake Tech, and the theme this year is Closing the Skills Gap from K to Career. It is a conference for professionals. I believe it's a $50 registration fee, I believe it's, or something of it in that ballpark. Is fairly cheap. The National Academic Advising Association regional meeting will be in Raleigh, April 19th through the 21st. So if you also serve as an academic advisor, that is probably a great professional development conference for you to attend. If you deal with veterans, there are a number of NC Strive professional development conferences taking place for those that have heavy veteran populations. One is April 5th at Johnson C. Smith, one is April 21st at Haywood Community College, and one is May 11th at Wake Tech. And I'll have the registration information and links in the documents that I submit to you as well. All right. Sorry about that. In terms of conferences for students, I spent some time sort of Googling the Southeast region to see if I can find a majority conferences. And so these are some that I was able to identify. Sorry about my phone in the background. I can't fully cut it off. One conference I note, the National Student Leadership Diversity Conference, not only travels to Atlanta, but travels to a number of different regions in the Southeast. So that may be an opportunity for you to take your students to as well. We received a communication here, and I believe everyone on our listserv should have received an invitation to the Minority or the Male Achievement Center Summit at North Carolina Central. It's a Saturday, April 22nd. They have a registration page with a tentative agenda up, and they are also looking for presenters for this particular conference as well. So it may be an opportunity not only for you to present information and what you're doing, or provide a different type of leadership workshop, but also an opportunity for you to take your students to an event. I have to put my alma mater up here. The Men of Color National Summit is taking place at Clemson, April 27th and 28th. They have some fairly large speakers, and therefore the cost for this particular conference, I believe, is quite costly. Right now, I think it's over $200, over $200 per person for registration currently. And as you get closer to the date, it was going to slightly creep up incrementally. If you are sort of in the Western region and can drive down the mountain fairly quickly, that may be another avenue or conference to take your students or for professionals to go to as well as the System Office Student Leadership Development Program. We asked, each college has the ability to nominate up to 2 students. Applications are due today. If you have an application that you're working on, or you're waiting on a president's signature, you can send those within the next maybe over the weekend or something like that, and it'll still be okay to be accepted. We will select 30 students from that class, and then they'll be in our leadership program for the 17-18 academic year. Some tidbits and notes that you may not know. So the American Association of Community Colleges has published a new agenda for the Trump administration, and so it's very interesting read. It does talk and address a number of different issues, especially working with undocumented students, underrepresented students, low-income students. So it's definitely worth a read. And another sort of research article, if you go to mdrc.org, they are a policy / research arm, and I think they're based out of Washington, D.C. We were included in one of their research reports. They wrote about boosting college success for men of color. It was a research article that was done in December 2016, and they highlight actually a number of your programs as well. At least they may be referenced by name. Again, it's boosting college success for men of color, mdrc.org, search under publication. I'll also have a link to the document here in the presentation that I sent out to everyone. For 2 scholarship programs, one, the Carolina Student Transfer Excellence Program, C-STEP application deadline, they always have a deadline of April 1st. And so if you're meeting with students and your institution has C-STEP, I believe there are 12 institutions in our system that now have C-STEP. We always want to make sure that we encourage students to apply for that program as well as NC State, the Good Night Scholars Program, which is a basically full tuition scholarship for students transferring it to NC State in a STEM field, has been extended to community college students. And so if you have students at your institution, please make sure you share that information and encourage students to apply for that program as well. Lastly, I do have a few questions here that folks have asked. And so the first question is actually from me. And it's, what additional resources, information do you need from the system office, or do we need to provide for you? And what are some challenges or barriers that you may be facing that we can help you overcome? Does anyone have any specific response or anything they'd like to say? You all are a fairly quiet group this morning. Well, if not, my contact information will be on the last slide. And you should have not only my office phone, but my cell phone as well. So feel free to call or text as needed. If I don't know the answer, I will do my best to find an answer for you and go from there. The next question I received was, where does the minority male program reside at your institution? Who does that person report to? And is it considered a part of the student life side of the house or student success side of the house, or does it report to someone on the academic side of the house? This was a question from one of our smaller institutions, and they were really trying to see what's the best, whom is the best person for them to report to in terms of their institutional structure. And so if anyone, does anyone have any thoughts or comments for this as well? Hearing none. A question we receive a lot is, how do we pay individuals over the summer, and when do funds need to be returned? So officially, the system office funds will not go away until June 30th of 2017. However, Some local institutions have policies in which they cut off spending or purchases a little bit early because they're doing end of the year closeout. And so we can't supersede an institution's policy, but for our needs, the funding is still available until June 30th. Now, for paying individuals over the summer, a number of institutions do a number of different things, right? So they, say they maybe pay for something out of the grant funds and then use institutional funds for a different expenditure, or sometimes they encumber the funds for a summer contract that they create. There are a couple different ways to do it. It's not always the cleanest, just because typically state funds can't be used to pay for work that hasn't been completed yet. And so in order to best answer that question, it's probably best that you partner with your local business office to figure out the best policy and process for you. And again, for the different funding deadline, we do know that some colleges cut spending off, say, on June 15 or what have you. Just know that funding from our side is available until June 30th. And so definitely work with your local business office for any expenditures that you're either trying to make right close to the budget line before we jump to the new fiscal year. Another question we received a lot, and this one I'm excited to say we're definitely working on, is can you provide a cohort list for your institution? That answer is yes. So yes and no. So here at the system office, when we are querying our data warehouse, we don't use Informer. They use a different service and a different system. And so now that the data file has come in for this fall semester, we are going to partner with a college to develop sort of a step-by-step guidelines so that institutions can run a Informer query to basically develop the same cohort that we will find at the system office. We think it will be hopefully something that will be helpful for each of you, and hopefully it'll provide additional clarity. And all I have to say, my information is here, and if no one has any sort of last information or last comments, I'll either open the floor up, but that was all the information that I had to share today. I will be sharing out all the presentation. I'll share out the presentation as well as the end of the year report and materials today before I leave. And if no one has any sort of last minute questions, I'd like to thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Evans.
No problem.